Welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. If you are trying to get found in the digital world, folks, it's awful noisy and awful crowded out there. You're going to need some professionals like Oak City Tech help you develop that web design so people can find you, and then start working on your social media platforms, regular posts, how you can be found, how you can educate people on what you do. You need to talk to the professionals at Oak City Tech. Go to oakcitytech.com. Tell them we said hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Welcome back to Triangle BNI. Each week, we bring you a successful small business story from Triangle BNI. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle is the Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill area. Each week, 30 chapters, almost 600 members get together, and our only goal is to help each other grow our businesses. Our small business success story today is Bryan Piccirillo, Edward Jones, financial advisor. He's got all your money questions because there's nothing going on in his world today. Bryan, how are you?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, but your world got a little busier last week, didn't it?
Week, month, year. Depends on what your time frame is, but yeah, it's definitely been an interesting year for sure for everybody. I usually tend to tell people when things happen, there's two things you check: your bank account and if you're healthy.
Yeah.
So there was a big run on everybody's money and making sure they were staying safe and healthy.
Yeah. So it's October 5th today. We're what, a month away from an election. Got a sitting president in the hospital. So let's talk about a couple things just for people to think about. This time of year in a normal election year, what expectations can they have of the market and information that's out there?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I probably get that 10 times a day. And it all depends on really your perspective. I think that the way the market, you have to understand, is politics don't necessarily control the market, but they influence it. So with politics, the fact that uncertainty is arising of who's going to be president uh, creates a whirlwind of movement of either high expectations or low expectations. So really, it's the uncertainty of, is it going to be in this current year Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Um, that's really driving it. So the people that are optimistic about Biden, when things look well for him, those people were happy and excited. When things look well for Trump, and those people that support his views, they're happy and excited about the market. But really, it just creates a lot of volatility that you got to kind of be able to weather that storm some.
What does history show us from the market standpoint? uh, Republican versus Democrat, or a sitting president gets reelected versus a new president coming in?
Ultimately, and I've got some great charts on this, so if anybody would ever want it, just if they get a hold of you or me, I'd be glad to show it to them. It honestly, there isn't a huge difference. It's funny to say that when you look at the 4-year span at whoever was in office, or even whoever was in office and what Congress was made up, in those 4-year spans of their term, I think in a Republican-led administration, it was like an 82% positive returns over those 4 years. And don't quote me on these numbers. I'd have to go back and look at them. But in a Democrat, I think it was like 78% positive returns. So again, not a huge difference. It's just the perspective of Republicans tend to think the economy does better when there's a Republican in office. Democrats tend to think the economy does better when a Democrat's in office. Go figure. But when you look at the actual numbers, it's really similar, and they both do really well.
Now, I thought I could believe everything I read on social media, Bryan. You must be missing something.
You know what? Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to get my fact checker to look into it a little bit better.
I imagine you get calls all the time from clients when the market, especially during COVID, I can't imagine them are phone calls you're getting, but in general, if the market takes a dump for like 400 points, that probably gets you some phone calls. And I think I know what you tell people, but go ahead when you get those phone calls.
So I will say yes and no. I get phone calls. So the other fun, it depends. So with the clients I work with, we actually prepare for this stuff ahead of time. So I don't get a lot of calls ultimately from my clients in these times because they're expecting it at some point. We were talking about this 4 years ago. How are we going to protect things? What are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do? Here's what will happen to your portfolio and what that means for you. So ultimately, I really haven't got a ton of phone calls from my clients, except for what I think what you were hitting at of, hey, you've always told me it's a great time to get into the market when we see these lows, and what are the things we can do to either make more money or cut down our tax bill, things like that we talk about, not necessarily panic type issues. It's more of how can we take advantage of this rather than panic. Now, the other side of that is the people I'm not working with that may be doing it on their own or have, an advisor that, isn't really talking to them a lot. That's typically the people that are panicking and sometimes just need that reassurance or a second set of eyes on things just to help them weather that storm. I use an analogy here is that, if you're on a ship in the ocean, you hit a storm, you're going through heavy waters and waves and rain, you're not going to jump off the side of the boat. You're going to weather through it. You're going to pound through it till you get to the calmer side of things. I tell people, when I sit down with them, that's the first thing we're going to talk about. There's going to be some storms that are going to come. Don't jump off the boat. Weather it. Let's work our way through it. Make all the right choices or as many good choices as we can. Wait for that calmer weather to come.
Bryan is in BNI chapter RDO1 called Chapel Hill Business Champions. They meet Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Right now it's on Zoom, but I believe in person you guys were meeting is it the Casual Pint?
Yep, Casual Pint. We were upstairs at the Casual Pint.
All right, so how's everybody in your chapter Zoom world holding up?
I think as with everybody, it's been great. We've actually expanded our group through Zoom, which, going into it, there was that fear of the unknown of what does this mean for a networking group that meets weekly in person and loves sitting down and having some good food and good conversations and good drinks at the Casual Pint. But it's gone really well. We've really honed in on, how we can help each other in these times. And it's really been a saving grace for a lot of people in our group as far as just generating business that, especially in the, there are painters or, people in that field that used to go door to door, roofers. Now we can actually, they've got to rely a lot more on word of mouth and referrals, which is what we are really good at doing here in BNI.
What was it about this chapter that attracted you to them?
There was two things. I am a believer in I want to create a family atmosphere with the group. So I am a big believer in creating a networking group where everyone in the group, you might not get along with them all the time, you might not agree with them all the time, but they've always got your best interest at heart. And that's really what I felt with the group I'm with, is that we're all looking out for each other. We may not always agree on the strategies and have conversations, but I know that when I have a client, for instance, that is going to sell their home, I know the realtor I'm going to send them to, top notch, going to take care of them, going to be a great experience, and it just looks well on me as well. So, and if a majority of the group is that way, that's only going to lead to more success for me.
And your fearless leader, or one of them, Pam Goodman with K6 Easy, is a friend of the show. She was on early on with us and spoke highly of you. And we have at our CD meetings consulting director meetings once a month. I always talk about Steve gives me a chance to update the show. And I said, hey, I'm always looking for good people to be on there. And immediately in the chat box, Pam goes, you better have Bryan Piccirillo on. I'm like, okay, I know Bryan. I'll reach out to him. So you come highly recommended from speaking of from trusted sources.
Putting the pressure on today, huh? So I have to perform.
Yep. Oh, you should have heard when we were instant messaging each other yesterday. Oh yeah, she's a big fan of you, which is good, and we're glad to have you here today. You have been a financial advisor for 3.5 years. You've learned everything you need to know about being in a small business so far.
I don't think you can ever learn everything. My background though is I come from a family of small business owners as well. So I was immersed in the small business world at a young age. My parents owned an assisted living home, started it from scratch, took out a loan. My dad lost his job actually right as they took out the loan. So it was an all or none venture, and I became a lot of free labor in those times of helping them, grow and have their business survive. So I've been around small businesses. I've seen a lot of that. And then I went into healthcare administration as well. So again, a lot of, I guess, larger corporation type budgeting, planning, strategizing, which obviously helps in a small business setting as well, with an MBA, and just having some experiences and some learning opportunities, and just being surrounded by people just taught me lessons that were amazing, and being successful myself. But yeah, do I think I'll ever know everything? No. I think there's always something. I mean, look at this year, for example. Who would have ever thought that your whole business model might have had to change on how you talk to people, or how you communicate what you do, or show how you can add value to people's lives. And it was definitely the first month was, okay, let's figure out a whole new strategy, and learn new tips and tricks and tools that'll help me through this.
How old were you when your folks bought the assisted living facility
I was, well, they didn't, yeah, they built it,
or
and
built
I
it?
was probably, I want to say 13 or 14 ish, right around there. So
And your first job in the company, in the family owned business, was what?
cutting grass. Yeah, doing yard work. My dad told me once, he's like, I had a son, so you could do all the chores I don't want to do, Brian. So yeah, so I used to help him cut grass, get groceries, put stuff away, and just you know do things that I think there's a lot of times where you're at a job and you think you're just doing trivial work sometimes, but you're absorbing everything that's going on around you. So I got to see how my mother and father treated employees and what that dynamic looked like. And then at home, I'd hear the stories of, like, here's what we got to worry about. Here's what's going on. So, even though I wasn't part of it, I was experiencing it, or hearing it. And I think that kind of, not only in my personal life of wanting to help people and seeing that's what my parents did, but just from a business sense, understanding, being prepared for different things that might come up, and strategizing to kind of, got steer the ship down the road 6, 7, 8 months from now, not just of what's going on today.
We've had folks on the show before that have been part of that have grown up in a family business, and generally the pay scale is pretty close to the same.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was one of two jobs. My other job was working at the city park and cutting grass there and emptying trash cans from people's picnics and all that. So I definitely, if financial advising wasn't where I was at, I'd be definitely a great landscaper.
And you're not that old, but my guess is that first lawnmower you used did not have that front wheel motor on it.
It actually did, which made it really heavy, at 14 years old. So it was one of those things that it was a gift and a curse, in a sense that it was great that it moved, but it was still pretty heavy. The worst though was living in West Virginia. There's a lot of hills and mountains, that some of the areas were so steep you couldn't cut them with a lawnmower. You actually had to use a weed eater, to cut the grass, on a hillside, which used to take days to do. And you'd fall down and slide down a hill. That was just
And it
part of
was
the job.
never an even cut.
Oh no, no, no.
How long did your folks have the business?
They still own it to this day. So yeah, they are now in their 60s, still running the business. Obviously, they've grown a lot since it was a 5-bed hospital, or assisted living home then, to 30 now, I believe they take in. So yeah, they're still running it, still managing it. Have a lot more help nowadays, but yeah, it's still going strong, and we still chat on a weekly basis about what's going on there, and how things are going and how I can help.
Just the one location?
Just the one location, yeah. They've kind of built additions onto it, but have expanded from the original square footage.
And did you have any desire to follow them in that business?
Not necessarily in that business, but I went into healthcare. So I've always had this vision of really helping people. That kind of came from that, just being in the healthcare world. I really wanted to do that. So I actually went to pharmacy school and got my doctorate in pharmacy, with that vision of just changing people's lives through health, much like they were doing. And this kind of leads me into the question is, well, why did you go into finance, or what made the change? I really realized working in the corporate world, I was kind of beholden to the vision of the employers that I worked for. So it was tough for me to really express myself and do what I wanted to do. And I just knew deep down there was something more. Being frustrated with seeing so many ways I could help people around me and just not being able to act on it. I needed the change. Wanted to become my own boss, like my parents did in that small business. So that kind of uh, appealed to me. Use my own vision and just really try to change the world. So that's kind of where that, I started to get that itch a few years back. Woke up one day, decided it was time, and found a company that I really enjoyed their vision as well, and got to help people not only improve their health but their finances as well. It's funny sometimes that I'll be, in my field, you obviously talk with people 50 and above a lot. Uh, with my background, it's unique in that sometimes we'd start talking about the retirement and it leads into I'm on this medication, and it's causing this issue of, what can I do to help it? So it's definitely been an interesting ride.
We are here with Bryan Piccirillo, an advisor with Edward Jones. Bryan is in RDO1 Chapel Hill Business Champions. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, it is crowded out there in the social media world, so please give Oak City Tech a call. They can help you do a number of things, including help you get found and stay found. Go to oakcitytech.com. Tell Drago that we said hi. Are you officially announced as Dr. Bryan Piccirillo?
I technically have a doctorate. You can call me doctor. However, I've never been called doctor.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of being called a doctor.
Are you still, and do you have to stay current in your pharmacy world?
I still have my licensure yet, so I'm licensed in North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia, um, and Indiana. I don't remember, but yeah, there are education requirements every year that you have to do. So I keep up on them. I'm not currently practicing in the field, and even honestly, when I was in it, I was doing a lot of administrative stuff and healthcare management. So I tell people my pharmacy skills are rusty. I can help you with a cough and cold, but don't trust me with much more than that.
Do you plan on staying current?
I plan on keeping my licensure. I don't know if it's more of a I worked so hard to get it that I would hate to lose it and have to go through it all again. But no plans in essentially using it for any kind of monetary gain or anything like that. I found my true calling and profession, and don't see myself going back.
I would imagine getting a doctorate degree and being a financial advisor, you're probably a pretty good test taker.
I am really good at tests, and that's only because I have a photographic memory. So I
Oh,
had a unique ability to not have to study a lot. I would just, visualize pages, and especially in healthcare, there's a lot of pictures with biologies and chemistry. So it was fairly, I'm not going to say simple. It's a bad word to use, but I had a different way of learning than most do that allowed it to be very quick and efficient.
do you just sit there with the information? Is that the best way for you to learn?
I am a scanner, so I feel that I am very productive in 15-minute increments, and that I will look at something for 15 minutes and really digest it, and then walk away from it and do something completely different. Watch TV for another half hour, go make myself something to eat, read a book, and then I'll come back to it, um, with a plan of here's how many pages or here's how much I want to get through. But I found for me personally, it's just been a lot better than sitting there for 7 hours and trying to digest and absorb things, for me.
All right, so hang on a sec. You've got these rugged Hollywood looks. You're a doctor, and you can retain information in 15-minute time frames, and then go play for a while and come back. Man, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
not
it drives
fair.
people crazy sometimes. Yeah,
That's just not fair.
yeah.
Who'd you get that skill from?
I think it was the way I learned how to study when I was in high school. So I had a father that wanted me to be successful and really wanted to me to be a doctor. So he would require me to bring all my books to him the first day of school, and he would actually sit down himself and outline all the chapters for me on paper. So actually create like summary cliff note outlines, and then hand them to me and say, Brian, memorize this. I'm going to test you on it. You don't know what I'm going to test you on. You're going, and the game we're going to play is if you get one wrong, we got to start all over. So I had to figure out what is the best and most efficient way to memorize all of this information to where I didn't forget anything. And it ultimately, I don't know if that's where it was born from, but I feel like that's where I remember starting to experience like, okay, that was on page 3, top left corner in blue ink. Okay, what did that say? And then it kind of appears there of what it is.
Wow.
Um, it kind of stuck with me.
All right. How long did it take you to realize he means it when I get one wrong, so don't get one wrong?
He meant it because yeah, it was a if I missed one, it was hand the papers back, go study for another half hour, come back, and we'll try again.
Wow. Then what
Yeah.
was your favorite class in high school and or college?
I can I say bowling? That was a
Yeah.
lot of fun in,
Yeah.
in college. No, I really enjoyed the finance stuff. Figure that is that I didn't realize it then, but I really enjoyed the statistics, economics, finance, and I thought it was more of a hobby because what I was looking at is, well, I'm making good money. What do I do with this money? So it was more of a hobby that became really what because I was so fascinated and intrigued by it. It kind of I became my skill set of taking money in pocket A and moving it over to here in pocket B. So it does things for me that I couldn't do at work with it.
The commonalities in customer service between a pharmacist and a financial advisor kind of similar, aren't they?
This is the one thing that I will say with people is healthcare and finances are intertwined. They're intermingled in everyone's lives. Is finance leads to stress and anxiety, which in health conditions you might not be able to get treated for things because you don't have the money for your, you eat bad food and create obesity and high cholesterol. But with that being said, is kind of back to your question, they're almost identical in the way I approach them and that my job isn't to sell you something or just say, here's what you do. Much like a doctor, if you went into your doctor's visit, you wouldn't go walk into the office, sit down in a chair, doctor walk out and say, here's some prescriptions I think you should take. You're probably got something wrong with you, but we're just going to give you this because I give it to hundreds of other people and it probably worked for you. You'd be like, this is the craziest doctor I've ever been to. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're going to do a bunch of tests. They're going to ask you for a bunch of information that you may or may not have. They're going to go and sit on it for a little bit, maybe use some resources that they have and come back and say, okay, based on everything that's going on in your world, here's how I'm going to treat you. Same with pharmacy. People come to the counter and say, I've got a cold. I've got these are my issues. I've got a stuffy nose and a sore throat and my back hurts. Now, it's my job to figure out as a pharmacist, was that flu? Was it a cold? Was it something else? And what's the best treatment for that? And sometimes what they were describing wasn't necessarily what they thought it was, something completely different. Finance is the same way. People have a problem, a perceived problem, what they think they know what's wrong. They have a bunch of information, and it's just drawing that out of them and asking them the right questions to get that. You know, some people come in and are worried about retirement when really we sit down and that's not their issue. It's something completely different than that we discover by asking those questions and kind of diving into what it is that they're really trying to do and what they're trying to achieve.
And in both, though, you have to ask questions to
It,
understand where they are.
it's all about listening. It's all about asking the questions and asking the right questions. I te- I I typically tell clients if they're going to meet with me the first time, we don't actually even talk about finances. Our first conversation has nothing to do with finances. It has to do with making sure I understand their situation and what's going on in their life or in their world, and seeing if I'm the right fit for them in, in that situation. But yeah, it's surprising to people that they'll walk out and say, "Okay, so we didn't even talk about how much is in my checking account or 401k." That's not important to me. It's funny to say is I'm a person in finance that will be the first to say finances and everything. You have to balance what is right for your life and what is appropriate, and finances play a part of that, but it shouldn't be the only thing that is your life.
Yeah, and back to your point about talking with the clients, as a consulting director, when I'm visiting one of my chapters, I will occasionally get called on to do the educational moment. And one of my favorite ones is don't spill your food in the lobby. And everybody's, I get these blank looks, and I always pick on the financial advisor because it's the most appropriate. And this one, Kenny Bollinger with Madison Oaks, picked on him. He's been on the show before, and I said, I'm gonna use Kenny as an example. Said I walk into Kenny's office, say, hey, I'd like some investing or financial advice, and he goes and he does a 9-minute spiel about the 18 things that they do. And he said, okay, Mike, which one do you want to sign up for? And I would say, I've got a 2-year-old grandson. I'm just trying to figure out what I can start for him. And the analogy is just like you said, you got to ask questions to find out where their pain point is and what they're actually needing, instead of just saying, hey, here's one of our 18 things you can buy. They're all wonderful. Which one do you need? Where do I sign you up? And
Yeah, I think that is probably the biggest key thing that I learned is I've got a lot of knowledge, but people don't want to hear it.
no,
They don't care. They're not, I mean, not that they don't care, but they want you to help them with their problem, not with every problem, with what is going on in their world and how you can help them. So it's identifying that versus, like you're saying, is saying, well, I've got this and this and this, and let me show you these great charts that I have and these great investment ideas. And they're just coming in and saying, hey, Brian, I want to buy a house next year. I don't care about all this other stuff that you're showing me. That was definitely a turning point for me when I realized, it's not about me. It's about the person sitting across from me and really what they're trying to do. And I just want to help them with that.
it is as a business coach, we have this conversation a lot with, and I tell small business owners, because it was pointed out and explained to me a while ago, and it makes perfect sense, that the customers don't really, just like you said, they don't really care about us and our business. They need their problem solved. And until, as a small business owner, you can get to that point, you're going to be talking here and your client's coming in here with a question and there's no connection whatsoever.
The eyes glaze over and they just nod and they have no idea what you're saying and they leave. And
Yeah, you may as well be going into a timeshare condo cell. It's like, all right, I'll sit here for 30 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Where do I get the free?
Exactly. Yeah.
I want the free dinner in Vegas. My wife and I, when we honeymooned in Vegas and we had to go, there was there were tickets, and this was long before your parents even started their business. I'll tell you how long ago that was. And there's a really good show we wanted to see, and somebody goes, well, just go sit in that timeshare seminar for a half hour and they'll give you tickets to the show. We're like, we're game for that. Oh, it was painful afterwards because then they won't let you out of the room till you answer questions, then they begrudgingly hand you the 2
trying to get you to sign on the dotted line and all that fun stuff.
Those are so funny, but yeah, but you have to ask questions. So did you enjoy being a pharmacist? How much time did you spend in a pharmacy dispensing drugs?
Dispensing, I spent my first 5 years in retail, which would be Walgreens, CVS, those places. I was at Walgreens. And then I went into the clinical setting, which is the hospital, and worked in the clinical side, which again isn't necessarily dispensing, but it's diagnosing, helping doctors diagnose and administer medications and figure out what the patient needs. I did that for 2 years, and then from that point on was all management. So then I got promoted into administrative roles. My final role before going into financial advising, I was actually over at Duke Hospital, running their perioperative pharmacy division, which most people don't know about because you're unconscious when we're around and in the room. But yeah, that was kind of my last stint in pharmacy, but mostly administrative stuff. So dispensing wise, I'd say about 5 years of my career was spent with what people think of when they hear pharmacist, of the behind the counter.
And when you're in that role, a lot of times you have to be a detective. First of all, do you enjoy those type of shows, and are you a puzzle guy?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Man, you must be spying on me. I'll have to check the video cams. I am immensely fascinated with puzzles. Growing up, I used to watch Matlock with my grandmother. Huge show, one of my favorites. Big into Sherlock Holmes. My office has the waiting area, has a bunch of like brain teaser puzzles where you try to take the nail out of the middle of the box and things like that. I've always been fascinated with those. But yeah, mystery and solving puzzles and all that have been extremely intriguing to me, and I love them.
But it makes sense based on your current business and your previous business. They're both, you have to do some digging, you have to be curious, and you have to figure out how the pieces get together, whether they walk in and go, hey, doc, I got a sniff, I got a runny nose, or like you said, we want to buy a house, how do we do that?
Mhm. That there's so much satisfaction there in that solving something or helping somebody, and I think that's really where I found out what my why was. 'Cause people like to say what their why is. When I can help somebody with a puzzle or a problem in their life, that when you get to the end of it, and which is usually presenting them, here's how you fix that, or here's your solution, and watching, it's almost like an aura come off them. They stand up, they sit up a little higher. There's a pressure is relieved. You can see some stress go away. It's like solving a puzzle. It's that satisfaction you get when you figured out how do these things come apart or go together. Same exact feeling, just on a much deeper level when you're helping a human being versus some triangles and squares on a sheet of paper.
We are here with Bryan Piccirillo, an advisor with Edward Jones. Bryan is in RDO1, Chapel Hill Business Champions. They meet Wednesdays at 10 a.m. So if you have that time slot open and would like to be a Zoom visitor to their chapter, they'd love to have you. It's a good group, and you'll learn a little bit more about BNI and kind of who's in the chapter. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, one of the things people don't talk about is a mailing list, because you have to stay in touch with your clients. You can't really call them all the time. And heck, these days you can't even go visit them. So you create a newsletter, you put together your mailing list, allows you to stay in touch with your clients just to keep them up to date with what you have going on. That's one of the things Oak City Tech can help you with. So please go to oakcitytech.com. Tell them what you're looking for. I know they'll be able to help you. All right, Bryan, my wife is a huge puzzle person. And somebody, I think about a month ago or 2 months ago, I believe it was Campbell's Soup, I think, was running a contest where you could enter and win a 1,000 piece red only puzzle. And she would love that. I wish I could have gotten it for her, because all the pieces, it's just like a puzzle, all those little pieces, but
Uh,
they're all exactly the same color. And she thought that would be so much fun. I can assume you would like that challenge.
that would be a challenge for sure. I really enjoyed the kind that where they give you a bunch of shapes and
Mhm.
you got to put them back into the box, and you can flip them around or they go different areas. I don't know if you remember those at all. Those were always fascinating to me. That and I'm a big riddle guy, so I enjoy trying to see if I can figure out riddles. That was another fun fact that same principle of like, okay, what's the catch here? What am I missing? What do I got to figure out? Is it wording? Is it something? So
Very nice. All right. You come from I think small town would be an appropriate description of where you're, one of the places you are from. You are not big on, you're not over, it's not easy to find you on social media. So well done. Is it Follinsby,
it
West
is. Yes,
Virginia?
yes. Follinsby, West Virginia. It is barely a town.
The latest number that they had the other day was roughly about 2,800 people.
That sounds about right. Yeah,
How many stoplights?
I can count them. Let's see, one, about four. We had about four. So it was a mill town. It was a steel mill town. It's right on the Ohio River. So yeah, we had some kind of, we'll call it civilization. I tell people I'm from West Virginia. I do wear shoes. Never dated any relatives.
All your teeth touch?
All the rules of West Virginia did not apply to me. Um, so yeah, but it was a steel mill town, so it was bustling when I was younger. A little bit different nowadays, though.
And you were born there?
I was born there. Yeah,
Right. Are your folks from there?
they are as well. Yeah, they were from there. My mom traveled a lot. She came from a military family, um, but then came back and settled there. My dad's always been there. He worked in the steel mill as
How
well.
how many generations back can you go there?
One, two, two. Before that, on my dad's side, they came from Italy. That's a whole story in itself. Um, And my mom's side is, yeah, they're from mostly Ireland before that, but they lived a lot more around the country than my dad's side did.
Now, I grew up in decent sized cities, mainly here in Raleigh, and I talk with people who grew up in small towns, and there's the good and the bad.
Yeah, there's definitely that. So the good thing was we were actually only about a half hour outside of Pittsburgh, PA, which made it nice that there was a city around. The bad was it was a small town, and if you know anything about small towns, you can do nothing without everyone finding out about it. So that is pretty much how it still is today. But I still remember I would do something as a child, and before I even got home, my dad already knew. Somebody had already called him or told him that, hey, Brian was at so and so, and I'd be in trouble before I knew I was in trouble.
And the other thing I've learned from folks in these small towns is they would rather deal with the law enforcement than their parents.
Oh yeah, there was one time the law enforcement brought me home to have my parents deal with me. They said, they go, Phil, which is my dad. They're like, what do you want? What do you want to do with him? He's like, I'll take care of him. I'm like, all right, see you later.
What did you do?
I thought it was I was young, but we had that. Remember that hairspray that like would dye your hair, but it was only temporary, like Halloween. And I had a thing of it. I was walking by a garage door, and I went across the garage door with it, like just a big line, and the person was sitting on their porch or something, and grabbed me, and then the police came and took me over to the house, and I talked with my dad.
What was your first paid job growing up?
First paid job was at the park there, the Fallsby Park. So it was great in the sense that it was my first paid job. My dad actually made me get my worker's permit at 15. So I don't know if it's changed now, but back then you had to be 16 to work unless your parents would sign off on you working earlier. And my dad wanted me to work. Um, but I can honestly tell you, I do not wish taking garbage bags out of garbage cans after a picnic at a park that everything is dumped in with pop and food and everything. You've got bees swarming, and you're trying to, and they're the cheap bags, and so my first job consisted of cutting a lot of grass, emptying a lot of garbage cans, until I got promoted there to night maintenance, which was security, which was great. And that was more just sitting around and making sure nobody snuck into the pool.
Yeah.
But what we would do is say, if you bring us food, you can go swimming at night. So yeah, we created a barter system.
And your dad, if they'd have given your dad permission to get you a worker's permit at 12, he probably would have done it, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah, yeah. He was big on. My parents were definitely, they would provide for me anything that I wanted, but there was a huge stressor on understanding what work is and how to work, and being responsible. And it was great for me in that it afforded me to do and buy a lot of things at the young age that a lot of my friends couldn't do, whether with cars and gas and just other things that when you're 16 years old you think are important, and you look back and you're like, why did I buy that stuff?
What was your first car?
It was a Dodge Neon.
Ooh.
Yeah, it caught fire just randomly one day.
I hope you weren't in it.
No. Yeah, the engine just caught on fire one day, and that was the end of that car.
What color was it?
White. Yeah.
Ooh. What'd you pay for it?
Oh, back then, I don't even remember. It wasn't expensive. Like $6,000,
The engine caught on fire. How many brothers and sisters you got?
One younger brother.
Were you a good big brother?
I'm gonna say I was, but I'm sure he might have a different opinion of that if you got him on the show. I challenged him. He wanted to be like us, so he was the annoying little brother that wanted to tag along all the time. I was the older brother that said, I don't want you to tag along all the time.
Yep.
But for him, it made him really competitive. He became an athlete, good in sports, and is now actually a basketball coach in the area. So I think I'm going to say I had something to do with that by letting him play with us and not taking it easy on him, and really making sure he knew who was the older brother and in the relationship.
At his acceptance speech into the West Virginia High School Basketball Hall of Fame, will he give you credit for that?
Probably not. No, no, no. I'm sure he won't.
So let me guess, in a small town in West Virginia, the name Piccirillo just kind of jumps out.
There was a lot of us though. Yeah, I came from an Italian town, so everybody's name ends in a vowel of some sort. If you go there, so there's Piccirillos, Ciccarellos, Cicolelas. We've got them all. Petros. Yeah, if you didn't end in a vowel, you were out of place.
How many cousins do you have coming from an
I don't.
Italian
I couldn't
family?
even tell you how many. I couldn't even count them all. That was actually a funny thing. I remember in high school, if there was a girl that I was interested in, I would go and ask my parents, "Are we related to them in some way?" And I had to. That was the first question I'd ask them because I didn't want to, ask somebody out that I was related to. Like, "Oh yeah, that's our second cousin," and you leave them alone. No. But yeah,
And the easy question just begs in West Virginia, so that's not good.
right, yeah. You get to third or fourth, you're all right. Second, no.
Well, how many brothers and sisters did your dad have?
Oh, 8.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And are they all did they grow up in the area?
They all grew up in that area. They all actually lived in the same home. It was like a 2-bedroom home, so I think there was 4 kids per bedroom. Yeah, so small home in the area. There's crazy stories there as well. Yeah, with my
Oh,
parents,
one
but
of your
they all
uncles.
lived together most of their lives. A lot of them moved away later on. A lot of them stayed, but I think that became the congregating point that every year everybody would kind of come back to the area to for a family reunion or to meet up.
Now, my sister's husband, his last name is Sharapa, and they grew up in Lorain, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland.
Hmm.
Massively big Italian family. They would always go to his grandmother's house on Sunday for sauce.
Yep.
Same thing for
Yes,
you?
definitely. That is a staple of Italian household is the food days. It was amazing in that, and I still have people over with COVID a little bit different, but I'll have parties at my house or get-togethers with people in the area, friends and family if they want to come. That I cook food because I think it was instilled in me. If you invite people over, you have a lot of food, way more than people can manage. That they've got to bring their own Tupperware, or you're eating it for the next week yourself. But yeah, it was a all-day event of big um, pots of sauce and food, and you ate about 6 or 7 times, and you didn't stop. And yeah, people would come about noon and leave about 2 in the morning, and you just eat and talk and have a good time.
And there was no negotiation about what your Sunday was going to be, what it was going to be involved in your
Nope,
Sunday.
nope. Everybody kind of had their role too. So my aunt was really good at making cookies. So she would make like pizzelles and lemon drop cookies and all this stuff. So she was really good at that. And everybody kind of had their role to play of what they would bring or not bring, based on what their specialty was.
At the height of this, at peak time on a Sunday, how many people would be in the house or there?
Counting all the kids there, all my
Yeah,
cousins and everything.
everybody.
And I can remember in our house, I would probably say 12, probably somewhere around 30 ish. Yeah.
Now, one of your uncles had to be the most fun uncle that all the cousins loved hanging out with, right?
Oh yes, yeah. Well, they were all pretty fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. The one that I enjoyed, that I thought was the most fun was my uncle Delbert. For my brother, I think it was my uncle Dick. Um, but yeah, he was the fisher hunter. Torture you in a good way, and that he would wrap you up in a blanket and swing you over his head because you were light enough to do that, or you almost got sick. Just a good time to be around.
And
But
his name is Delbert.
his name was Delbert. Yeah.
Is that an Italian first name? Hmm.
It is not now. Yeah, he
Okay.
came from. So we got, yeah. My dad was Felix Delbert. There's Felix Jesse. I know everybody's nicknames, so I have to think of real names.
What are their
Bootsy,
nicknames?
Bootsy, and Kaga, and there's and funny story about that. Kaga was my grandfather. I never knew what it meant, and we always called him Grandpa Kaga. It actually means, and I'll use the proper term since we're on broadcast, is it means poop pants. So I don't know where he got it from, but all of my family called my grandpa poop pants. um, based on what his nickname was. But it was, just things like that that you learn later on. You're like, my family was just not quite
Mhm.
all there with how it went, but it was fun.
And there was always a lot of hugging, a lot of arguing, and a lot of eating, right?
Oh yeah, it was like being in a gang. But you never knew who was on whose gang. So there was always an argument of sides of, there were teams, and then next week there'd be a different argument, and there'd be new teams that would form on who was on each side. But yeah, but then eventually everybody loved each other again. But yeah, there was always a dilemma of some sort that everybody had to voice their opinion on.
That's good. We are here with Bryan Piccirillo, an advisor with Edward Jones. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. You'll give them a call, folks. First thing you need to do is get a website up, because if potential clients can't find you, it's going to be hard to do business with you. So give Oak City Tech a call. Go to oakcitytech.com. Tell them we said hi. I always like going through. Oh, by the way, speaking of Follinsby, West Virginia, what I found, and everything on the internet's true, is your most decorated citizen from Follinsby, West Virginia. Do you know who that would be?
I don't. No, I'm curious.
That would be Lou Holtz.
Oh yeah, oh, I knew. Yeah, I didn't realize he was the most decorated. Yeah, he went to St. Anthony's.
That's the one most people know.
Yeah, he is big in my area. A lot of people in my hometown have season tickets to Notre Dame games, and they will travel up there on the weekends to go. Yes, that is one of our claims to fame. Lou Holtz and went to St. Anthony.
And I imagine you are big Steelers fans
Yes, I am. There isn't any other team.
and Pirates.
Not so much baseball. Yeah, I mean, would watch the Pirates play. I went to a lot of games back in the day with my father, but I was more of a basketball, football guy, and hockey.
Who'd you follow basketball? The Celtics?
Well, basketball, it was more based on players. So I was a big Hornets fan, believe it or not, growing up in
Gee,
that area. Yeah. So basketball, I was Hornets and Duke
yeah.
for college.
Okay. No, reason enough for that. So it's on your Facebook page the other day, and you were promoting a storytelling workshop with a gentleman named Rain Bennett.
Yes. Yep. It is.
Storytelling is underrated. And I always tell people, because I do new member training for BNI, is when somebody asks you what you do or something about you, when in doubt, just tell a story. Don't give me an Ivy League 30-minute description of, the 22 things you think you do. Just give me a story.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't realize the value and effect of a good story to make a point.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Is that people want to be connected. I think it's part of human nature to be connected with other people. So you've got to find a way as a business owner to connect with them. And really, the only way you can do that is through some kind of story, whether it's about yourself or what you do or how you help somebody that they can relate to and say, wow, I really feel that. And I want to be part of that as well. And that's really, where I met up with Rain is we kind of had the same philosophy in that planning is extremely important in life, planning and strategizing. If you don't have a plan, you don't have a strategy, you're just writing things on a piece of paper and wishing and then wondering why nothing gets done. So as we talked, we kind of, I kind of said, you know what, Rain, I'd really like you to help me with my storytelling and my chatting. And that's really, kind of started our relationship. And then we started talking and I said, you know what, this is something, kind of like you're saying, that business owners don't realize they need, but they need it. I mean, how many times have we sat down in a networking event and you can tell the people that you connect with when they give their 60 seconds because they've got a story to tell of what they do, why they do it. And the other people that are kind of just mumbling and bumbling through it and just trying to recite what their company told them to say that has catchwords or phrases in it.
And we know from networking, and if people, even if they don't network a lot, if they just stop and think of who they've referred to a friend of a friend, oh, I need somebody to cut my grass. Oh, my buddy Billy does that. Is people buy people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do my research and I professionally stalk my guest each week, I go to Google. I usually go to page 7 or 8 because that's where you find the nuggets. And dude, you're hurting me. I got all my stuff by page 2, which is never good. The two things that because you and I know each other a little bit.
Mhm.
We've talked a couple times since we're COVID friends, I would
Yep,
say.
yep. I've never seen the bottom half of your body in my life, ever.
Exactly.
Yep,
Nor have I to you. And
yep.
so I call you Vico. Yeah. But the two things that jumped out of me that I wanted to know about you to connect, one is Follinsby, West Virginia, because I love small town stories and grandmother stories. The grandmother stories are the best. They beat every story. And then the other thing I found with you on LinkedIn, why you follow Pierre Trudeau and the French president Macron.
I'm an information junkie.
Mhm.
So my thing is, anybody that I, you know, look at as they can help me in some way, kind of like you're saying, what is the little nugget that I might get from them? I don't know what that is. And, I don't want to follow not anything but finance people because I want to know about other things that are going on in the world. So, you know, things going on in Canada, they've been really successful with this whole COVID issue is,
Yeah.
what are they doing? How are they doing it? And coming from healthcare, I still have a fascination and, want to learn about those kind of things and what what's going on, what's not going on kind of thing. So,
And I like your point on that because information is one thing. I like it when when you apply it in a practical sense because somebody could tell you what this stock would do or this investment would do or this 2-week course would do for you, but apply it into my life and then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. So I understand
yeah.
why you enjoy following those two
Yeah,
guys.
and that's my thing is principles over just advice. I could tell you a stock to buy today, but then you're dependent on me for the rest of your life to tell you the next one and when to buy it or when to sell it. But if I teach you the principles or let you understand what you're reading or what you're watching or what or who to follow or watch, you can do it yourself. I'm a resource and an advocate for you, but you're not relying on me. And I think that's really what I try to instill in my practices. My clients shouldn't be relying on me. They should work with me because they love working with me and I have an expertise and a skill set that they don't have the time, knowledge, or desire to handle, but they understand it and they know why we're doing it.
The other thing I like about BNI, and I've told people this, I'm a huge fan of BNI. It's not for everybody because you have to want to be part of a group and you want to be a giver, first of all. Uh, the other thing I like about BNI is the community involvement of the members. And I've got you for Kiwanis, Rotary, and Durham Young Professionals.
Yeah, it probably needs updated as well. So yeah, I've Durham's probably the biggest focus as well as entrepreneurs, young professionals. I went into, I kind of talk about the young professional side of it. So I switched professions not to work with uber rich individuals. I actually got into this profession to educate those that think that they don't deserve or can't afford a financial advisor. I wanted to work with, people just starting out of saying, if you do X, Y, and Z on the beginning, it's going to make life a lot easier for you 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So that kind of led me down to a lot of becoming a volunteer in a lot of mentorship programs, young professionals, those kind of things, where I could definitely make a difference in people's lives that maybe are just starting out or don't have a big nest egg set up, but they can start to learn or get the tools that they need to be successful. Um, Rotary again is another a great one. Is I'm big into community service. My part of my why is helping the community, helping the world, changing things. And Rotary is a big believer in that. It's an apolitical, it's community service oriented, which I really love. This year I'm leading the polio. I'm the polio chair for the Durham group. So it'll be a trip to Pakistan, raising money for that um, as well as at my church. On the other side of it, I am part of the stewardship ministry there, so I'm doing the Dave Ramsey FBU classes there for people of the church, and just being a resource for them as well.
And I like that. And I think a lot of people miss out on what they can get from just helping. And really, kind of from a business standpoint, you never know who you're going to meet either.
Yeah, and I don't go it in that way. I mean, I've met great people and I've met people that way, but that's when I made my switch. It was really because I was working 60 hours a week and my life was consumed by pharmacy. That I'm looking at that. Yeah, I'm helping people and I'm making a difference, but this is not really how I want to do it. I want to be out there, hands on, passing out lunches or doing something hands-on. And that's kind of where, but I still need to support myself and survive and thrive in the world. So it was like, how can I merge that together and find something that allows me that freedom to really do what I want to do, but also I get the joy of getting a paycheck for doing what I want to do.
Somebody watching us today has a 15 or an 18 or a 21-year-old that loves the puzzles and the whodunit shows and financial and helping people. How do you get started in this world if somebody wants to get in to be a financial advisor?
The beauty about a financial advisor is anybody can do it. I think same with healthcare. This was my thing, is we use a lot of big fancy words that mean simple, easy things just because I don't know, it creates a sense of aura. Quit using the fancy big words. Let's break it down and be simple. Anybody can do it. It's just a matter of, if you enjoy doing it, you're going to soak it in, much like I did. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of things you got to learn about. It's just that willing and that drive. There are programs that you can take to kind of get yourself set up to be an advisor, but ultimately you just need to find a company that has the faith and belief in you, and that's really through work ethic and hard work. So I came into the finance industry technically having no experience in finance from a professional standpoint, besides administration with my master's in business. What they saw was this person that was dedicated to hard work, was a leader in their profession, that wanted to be successful, that had all these things in place, and said, "We'll give you a shot." And that's really all you're looking for somebody that wants to be finance. And if you love it, you've already got a step ahead of it. But I think that's the other side of the coin, is the finance is actually a small part of what I do. It's that relationship with the person is the bigger key. It's understanding what they want and walking them through the good and the bad and talking them off the ledges, and celebrating the success with them. The finance part is probably 10% of my day. 90% is spent, talking with somebody that just lost a loved one, and walking them through that and saying, how can I help? And here's what I'm going to do to make sure you don't have to worry about, who pays this bill, and that getting paid, and getting things switched over. And I think, if you're not willing to kind of do that, it's going to be really tough.
I want to save the big question for last. But you also have your own finance show that you do. What got you started doing that, and where can people find that?
Yep. So that is on Facebook. No Bull with Bryan is the show, as well as the Wake Up to the Vibe Network. There's also a podcast out there. If you type in No Bull to Bryan, you'll find it on YouTube.
No, say that slowly for me.
No Bull, like a bull
No
market.
Bull.
No Bull with Bryan. Yep. Typically the way that's broken down is it's quick. It's just snippets. So we do about 15 minutes on something educational, 15 minutes talking with somebody that has been successful in what they do, much like you're doing, and just chatting with them of, what were their struggles, what were their achievements, what kind of advice can they give to people. So hopefully it adds some inspiration to people that lost their jobs and now have their own business with 10 employees underneath them.
I feel for you guys in the financial world, just the rules and regulations alone on what you can post and what you can say. This was explained to me one day. I don't know if you know John Bottega. We're talking one day. I forget who he's with now, but he's a financial advisor in BNI. And he said he can't even like a post of a friend holding a can of Coca-Cola because it could be implied. He says, "Hey, buy Coke stock." And I'd never
not on your business page. You can. On my personal page, you have a little bit more freedom, but I can't necessarily post financial information on my personal page. So you got to separate the two. Yeah. Coming from healthcare, I thought there was a lot of regulations there with HIPAA. Has nothing on finance, nothing at all.
All right. So the big question for you is you are a lifelong Steelers fan, correct?
Correct.
All right. So current or former Steeler player, who do you want to be the financial advisor for? Which Steeler player? You can be one.
Oh, I'd have to say Juju, because he's young. He's just got his driver's license, basically.
Pretty much.
I love working with people at a young age because there is so many possibilities and there's so many pitfalls that could come with that, because I hate to say it, in my profession there's a lot of sharks out there. A lot of people that look at people as a dollar sign, and they prey on young people that come into a lot of money or are going to get a lot of money, and they steer them down a road that's not the greatest advice. I was actually a victim of that as well, so I know that feeling. When I first graduated, I actually had a financial advisor that sold me some products that weren't so great, that cost me some money. So again, I hold that with me of that feeling. I don't want anybody to feel. So when you're young and you can work with somebody like that, that to me is so exciting, because it's a puzzle. You've got 40 years of where do we want to go with this? What do we want to do?
Well, I don't know if Juju Smith-Schuster is a fan of the show, but we'll see if we can get word to him and tell him the only advisor he needs is you. Bryan Piccirillo, advisor with Edward Jones. We've enjoyed having you on the show today. Good luck navigating Q4, or actually the next 28 or 29 days. I know they'll be interesting, to say the least, right?
I would agree with you on that. Yeah. Don't need
we've
the ball for that one.
Enjoyed having you on the show, and everybody, will see you next time on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.